atoms, down to the tiniest, wildest gears in the quantum machine. Let's zoom in. We need to shrink ourselves down past the rusty skin of our iron magnet, down past the grid of crystalline atoms, right into the dark, buzzing cloud of a single atom. What do you see? Electrons. They are usually drawn as cute little planets orbiting a nucleus. Wrong. They are fuzzy, vibrating clouds of probability, but they have one very specific real property called spin. Think of someone you know who is constantly fidgeting, never sitting still. That is an electron. It has an intrinsic, unchangeable angular momentum. It is a tiny spinning top of negative electric charge. Now think about what happens when you spin a charged object. A moving charge creates a current, and a looping current creates a tiny magnetic field. This means every single electron in your body, in your phone, and in the dirt beneath you is a microscopic bar magnet. But in most things, like your hand or a block of wood, these tiny quantum tops are spinning in completely random directions. They fight each other. They cancel each other out. The net result is a quiet, boring zero. But inside a permanent magnet, something beautiful happens. A quantum cooperative effect forces trillions of these tiny tops to align. They all point their spin axes in the exact same direction. Imagine a stadium of 100,000 people suddenly doing the wave in perfect, flawless unison. The collective jiggle of these aligned quantum spins adds up. It breaks out of the microscopic world and spills into the macroscopic room. The tiny individual whirlpools of each electron combine to form one massive, howling tornado of space. This is the secret of the permanent magnet. It is a quantum machine operating on a human scale. But wait, if magnetism is just the result of moving charges, does that mean magnetism doesn't actually exist as a unique force of nature? This is where your intuition fails completely. Because to see the ultimate truth of the vortex, we have to look at what happens when things start moving fast, really fast. Here is the secret Albert Einstein figured out when he was only 16 years old. Magnetism is not a separate force at all. It is just electricity, warped by the fabric of time and space. To understand this, let's build a scale comparison in your mind. Imagine a copper wire carrying an electric current. Inside that wire, there is a dense, tightly packed crowd of positive copper ions, which are stationary. And winding through them is a river of negative electrons flowing at a steady speed. Normally, the number of positives matches the number of negatives perfectly. The wire is completely neutral. It has no net electric charge. If you place a positive charge right next to the wire, nothing happens. It doesn't move. But now, let's make that external charge move parallel to the wire. Suddenly, a strange ghostly force begins to pull that charge toward the wire. We call this the magnetic force. But wait, how did a completely neutral wire suddenly start pulling on a moving charge? This is where special relativity enters the game. When things move relative to you, their space contracts. From the perspective of your moving charge, the flowing electrons in the wire are moving at a different relative speed than the positive ions. Because of this speed difference, the distance between the electrons squishes together. To the moving charge, the density of negative electrons suddenly looks higher than the density of positive ions. The wire is no longer neutral. It is now electrostatically charged. Length contraction factor equals 1 minus C2V2. This tiny relativistic squish creates an electric attraction. What you call a magnetic force is actually just an electric field viewed through the distorted lens of relativity. It is a literal twist in the geometry of space-time caused by motion. So far we've learned that magnetism is a 3D fluid-like vortex of space, generated by synchronized quantum spins and powered by the relativistic warping of moving charges. But if this force is a smooth, continuous warp of space, why do iron filings still form those distinct, separate lines on a sheet of paper? Let's look at the deception. Let's look at the deception directly. Why does a smooth, continuous fluid of force look like a bunch of discrete, hairy lines when you throw iron dust on it? We have to unmask the medium. Iron is not a passive spectator. It is a highly active collaborator in this lie. When you drop a piece of iron into a magnetic field, the field doesn't just flow through it like water through a net. Iron is ferromagnetic. This means it has a massive appetite for magnetic field. It acts like an incredibly low-resistance channel. The space inside the iron filing is thousands of times easier for the magnetic field to pass through than the empty air surrounding it. So what does the field do? It concentrates. It funnels itself directly into the iron. As soon as the first filing gets magnetized, it becomes a temporary north and south pole. It acts like a tiny extension of the bar magnet itself. It attracts the next closest filing, pulling it in nose to tail. This is the microscopic traffic jam in action. The filings are not mapping the field lines that were already there in empty space. They are actively creating the lines by clumping together. It's like looking at a rain-slicked highway. You see distinct streams of water running down the asphalt in separate channels. Does that mean the rain fell in neat, separated lines from the clouds? No. The rain fell everywhere, in a smooth, continuous sheet. The texture of the road simply forced the water to pool and channel into specific grooves. The iron filings are the grooves. The real magnetic field is a seamless, unbroken 3D pressure gradient. If you want to see the true, unadulterated shape of the storm, you have to throw away the flat paper and the iron dust. We need to map the actual three-dimensional vortex. And to do that, we have to look at how this pressure behaves in all three spatial dimensions simultaneously. Let's step away from the flat two-dimensional table. If we want to see the true shape of this invisible beast, we need to submerge a magnet in a fluid filled with tiny floating magnetic particles. A liquid like glycerin mixed with fine nickel powder. If you do this, something beautiful happens. The neat, curving flat loops instantly vanish. Instead, you see a dense, shimmering, three-dimensional cocoon of force. It looks like a glowing, fibrous apple with the magnet sitting at the core. But look closer. The fibers near the poles don't just curve outward and come back in. They twist, they spiral. The field is not a static set of tracks. It is a dynamic pressure field. Think of it like a weather map, showing high and low pressure systems. The air flows from high pressure to low pressure, but the rotation of the Earth forces that air to spin. The result is a cyclonic storm. In a magnet, the poles act like the extreme high and low pressure zones of space-time.